Today I want to talk about the second chapter in my book, Daughters of the King. The second chapter is about a woman named Hagar. She is an Egyptian woman, and she is called by Sarah and Abraham this slave girl. They know her as a slave girl. They never call her Hagar. God calls her Hagar, but not Abraham and Sarah. We know the story of God calling Abraham, and he moves eventually down to the Canaan, the promised land, the land of Israel, Palestine today, that area. And there's a famine when he arrives, or shortly after he gets there, and he goes straight through the land and off to Egypt. We assume that he got Hagar in Egypt as a slave. Abraham sold his wife Sarah to the Pharaoh and got all kinds of things in return, so probably got Hagar in return for selling Sarah. Anyway, God intervenes. They come back to the promised land. Sarah is getting old. She can't have any children. And to be childless was really a bad mark on a woman. It was disgraceful, dishonorable, especially in a culture that values honor. So it was a shameful thing. But there was a way of getting around it. You could get a second wife. You could get your servant or your slave to sleep with your husband, and then if they had a child, legally it would be the first wife's child. So this is the story of Hagar. Sarah sees Hagar, she takes Hagar, and she gives her to Abraham. Just like the woman took the fruit in Genesis chapter 3, she saw it, she took it, and she gave it to the husband beside her. Identical words. Very, we should be thinking of that story when we read this one. Here it is Sarah doing the taking, and Abraham accepts. Hagar becomes pregnant, has conflict with Sarah, understandably so, and Hagar flees into the wilderness. And God comes to Hagar and speaks to her there. And when you think of this story, think also a little bit of the story of Moses. When Moses is in the wilderness and he comes to the burning bush and he says, God, what is your name? And then later when Moses is on the mountain receiving the 10 words, he says, God, I want to see your face. And God says, no, if you see me, you're going to die. Whoever sees me will die. Well, Hagar in Genesis 16:13 says, I have seen God and I live. And she names God. That is astonishing, because if you name something, that means you are either in a very, very close relationship to that thing, or you're above it. The stronger names the weaker. So for Hagar to name God, the God who sees, is astonishing in this story. It tells us a great deal about Sarah, or Hagar, what kind of a person she is. And then later on, she has her son Ishmael. He's circumcised by Abraham. Circumcision signifies he's part of that covenant. Abraham is his father. And again, there's conflict when Sarah finally has the son of promise, through whom the Messiah will come. There's conflict between the sons. There's conflict between Sarah and Hagar, because now she has a son. She doesn't need that slave woman anymore. She tells Abraham to send him away, to get him, put her into the desert, which Abraham does. I think under duress, but he does it anyway. And God comes to Hagar and makes very similar promises that he had made to Abraham. Hagar would have a nation through this son. There would be many people. God would bless them. So as we think of this story, think of Hagar as a victim, as an abused woman whom God cares for, who God looks and sees. Because Sarah and Abraham, especially Sarah, treats Hagar like the Egyptians will treat Israel later on in the Promised Land. And God is for that person that is being mistreated. He's for the nation that's being mistreated. I encourage you to read the story in your Bible. I encourage you to get my book. It's available on Amazon, or you could send me a message and I can get you a copy as well. So thank you for listening, and remember, God cares for us, especially the downtrodden, the people that are the ones we would think aren't that important. Thank you for joining us today.